They mocked my online business. It's just a hobby. Mom laughed. I didn't respond, just left. Next month my face was on a magazine, and suddenly they wanted to talk. It started with a laugh. Not a warm one. Not even the kind of laugh people give when they're confused. No, it was that cutting, amused snort my mom gives when she's already made up her mind that something doesn't matter. We were sitting around the table for my younger sister Nicole's birthday dinner, her 24th, and the whole family was there. My mom had cooked, my dad had opened up a bottle of that cheap white wine he always thinks is fancy, and my older brother Jake was cracking jokes, just like always. It was one of those evenings where everything felt like it was running on autopilot. Same seats, same stories, same smiles hiding old wounds. Then my mom asked, "So, how's that little online thing going?" She said it like I sold friendship bracelets on Etsy. I hesitated. I wasn't planning on saying anything. Usually, I just say, "It's going," and let the subject die, like I've done for the past 3 years. But this time was different. This time, I had something real. I looked down at my plate, then up again. "Last month I hit 5,000, I said, trying to sound casual. "First time I cleared that in a month." At first, no one said anything. My brother's fork paused midair. Nicole blinked. Then it happened. My mom chuckled. That dismissive, amused laugh. 5,000? She said, shaking her head. "That's adorable. Still just a hobby though, right?" I didn't know what to say. I felt every pair of eyes at the table shift toward me, and then Jake, who never misses a chance to add fuel to a fire, grinned. "So wait, you're like an influencer now? Should we be expecting you to sell us protein powder or something?" Nicole giggled. "Or start dancing on TikTok?" I wasn't even angry. Not yet. I just sat there, chewing slowly, letting the burn settle behind my ribs. I'd spent 3 years building something from scratch, learning marketing, design, content, automation. Late nights, endless rejections, testing ads that flopped, launching products that bombed. All while juggling part-time jobs, warehouse shifts, substitute teaching, walking dogs, just to keep the lights on. And this was how they saw me. My mom reached across the table and patted my hand like I was a kid who just shared he'd built a Lego rocket. "Don't worry. You'll find something real soon." I didn't reply. I just nodded, stood up, and quietly walked out the front door. No scene, no speech. Just left my half-eaten dinner behind and let the door click softly behind me. That night, I left the family group chat. Blocked notifications. Ghosted every call. Because if they couldn't hear me when I was quiet, they'd sure as hell hear me when the world got loud. The walk from my mom's house to the train station was about 20 minutes, and I didn't remember a second of it. My phone buzzed once, then twice, first from Nicole, then Jake. "Dude, come on. She didn't mean it like that." Followed by a laughing emoji. I turned the screen off without reading the rest. It was cold that night. Not freezing, but that kind of damp chill that seeps through your hoodie and makes you feel smaller than you are. I sat on a bench at the station, alone under a flickering light, thinking about every birthday party, every cookout, every moment I had chosen to keep quiet to avoid scenes like that one. I had let them believe I wasn't serious. And that was on me. But not anymore. The next morning, I woke up with one thing echoing in my head: "You're on your own now." I quit my shifts at the tutoring center, told them I needed the hours to go full-time on that little online thing. I had about $1,200 in my checking account, and I knew I could stretch it just far enough. I canceled every non-essential subscription, paused my health insurance, not smart, but desperate, and poured everything into the business. I stopped checking Instagram. Didn't respond to texts. Turned off all group chats. 16-hour days, no distractions. For the first 3 days, nothing changed. Orders trickled in like always. But I kept going. Then, on the 4th day, something wild happened. A mid-tier fitness influencer. I had sent her a free download of my digital meal planner 3 months ago, posted about it out of nowhere. Just a 30-second clip of her screen captioned, "Can't live without this anymore." By midnight, my email was on fire. Sales jumped. Then doubled. Then doubled again. I stayed up until 4 a.m. refreshing Shopify like it was a slot machine. The next morning, I had 800 new followers. The day after that, 1,000 more. That same week, a rep from Rise and Hustle, one of the biggest entrepreneur magazines in the country, messaged me on LinkedIn. They wanted to feature my story in their Under 30 Breakthroughs issue. You went from broke to six figures in a niche nobody cared about, the editor said on the phone. We want to put a face to that grit. I said yes. And 2 weeks later, my face was on the cover. Slick suit. Serious expression. Headline in bold. The Digital Underdog, How One Creator Built a Six-Figure Brand from Nothing. The magazine hit shelves on a Monday. I didn't even know at first. A friend from an old design forum messaged me a picture of it, snapped in a Barnes & Noble in Chicago. There it was, my face, front and center, sitting next to Forbes and Fast Company. I stared at the photo for a long time. I hadn't told anyone in my family. Not a word. I wanted them to find it the way strangers did, randomly, unexpectedly, without warning. Let it hit them like a cold wave. By lunchtime, my phone started lighting up. First it was Sarah, an old classmate I hadn't spoken to in 5 years. Then it was Michael from the tutoring center. Then a message from Jake. Yo, you're on a magazine cover? I left him on read. Then came the text from my mom. Saw your magazine. That's amazing. We're so proud of you. I laughed. Proud? She couldn't even fake it a month ago. Couldn't muster a congrats when I mentioned $5,000 in a month. But now that I had a public stamp of validation, now that I was shiny and magazine approved, suddenly they remembered how to act supportive. Nicole sent a photo of the magazine cover from a grocery store display. Look who made it big. Mom says we should all do a dinner to celebrate. Jake sent a thumbs up. Respect, man. You proved us wrong, lol. I didn't reply to any of them. Not because I was angry. I had already burned through anger. I was past it. What I felt now was something colder. Something clearer. They hadn't changed. Success just made them look in my direction. And I wasn't about to reward that. I didn't post the cover. I didn't go live. I didn't tweet a single thing. I just kept working. Quietly. Strategically. The orders rolled in. The influencer collaboration turned into a formal brand deal. I hired a virtual assistant to manage support tickets. Then another to handle social. I was running lean, but I was growing. And behind the scenes, I was planning something else. A little dinner of my own. The idea started as a joke. I was on a late-night Zoom call with Ray, my new assistant, going over a PR pitch, when I half-muttered, "Maybe I should host my own dinner." "Flip the script." She laughed. "You absolutely should." That night I couldn't sleep. I just kept picturing it, my family, sitting around the table like always. Same house. Same faces. But this time, everything was different. The next day, I called a private chef. Booked a luxury event space, a sleek, intimate venue with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Rented a black Mercedes S-Class. Then I visited a tailor. Told him I needed something sharp, custom, unforgettable. "This for a date?" he asked. I smiled. "Something like that." He raised an eyebrow but didn't push. I even hired a photographer. Not for social media, just for documentation. Quiet receipts. Once everything was locked in, I sent the invitations. Handwritten. No group text. Dinner. Friday at 7. I'll send a car. No location listed. Just my initials at the bottom. No RSVP needed. I knew they'd come. And sure enough, by Thursday night, Nicole texted. "So mysterious. This isn't another business pitch, right?" I didn't reply. Jake sent a meme about rich people dinners. I ignored it. My mom sent a heart emoji. Then another. I let them all sit in that uncertainty. Friday came. I buttoned up the charcoal suit, adjusted the cufflinks, slid into the Mercedes, and leaned back as the city blurred past the window. The driver nodded at me in the mirror. Big night? I didn't answer. Just gave him a quiet smile. As we pulled up to the venue, I saw them, my mom in a dress I hadn't seen before. Jake in a collared shirt for the first time in a decade. Nicole with her phone already out, filming vertical. They didn't see me yet. I watched them from inside the car. They looked nervous. Good. The valet opened my door, and for a second, everything felt still. The city noise faded behind the tall windows of the venue, and all that remained was the muted surprise on their faces. Jake blinked. Whoa! Nicole gasped and whispered to our mom, who was already adjusting her necklace like she suddenly felt underdressed. I stepped out in silence. No big smile. No handshake. Just a nod. Thanks for coming. The inside of the venue was all dark wood, soft lighting, and that kind of elegant quiet that makes people sit straighter. A private chef was already plating the appetizers in the open kitchen, and a waiter greeted us with sparkling water and champagne. They didn't know where to sit. I waited a few beats, then motioned toward the long, rectangular table, just 6 seats. Enough for us, but spaced deliberately so no one could huddle into old alliances. Jake finally said, Man, you weren't kidding with this setup. I didn't reply. We sat. The first course came, ahi tuna tartare with a sesame crisp. Nicole took a photo of her plate, then looked at me across the table. This is way fancier than I thought. I figured, I said calmly. My mom smiled, nervous. So, what's the occasion? Some kind of launch party? I tilted my head. You could say that. We ate mostly in silence for the first few minutes. The air was thick, heavy with the weight of things unspoken. Then, during the main course, a perfectly seared filet mignon with truffle butter, I set my fork down. I wanted to tell you all a story, I said. They looked up. It's about a guy who spent years working on something no one understood. He taught himself everything, marketing, design, branding, while working 2 jobs to survive. Everyone thought he was wasting time. I paused. Jake shifted in his seat. I continued. Eventually, after thousands of hours, that guy hit his first milestone, 5,000 in a month. He told his family at dinner, thinking maybe they'd finally see him. My mom looked down at her plate. But they laughed. Silence. The mother, especially, laughed. Called it a hobby. Said he'd find something real soon. Nicole opened her mouth, but I held up a hand. He didn't argue. Just left. Ghosted them all. Not out of spite, but because, what was the point? I leaned forward, voice calm, steady. 30 days later, that same guy hit 6 figures. Got featured in a national magazine. Same people who dismissed him suddenly couldn't stop texting. Jake rubbed the back of his neck. Look, man. No. Let me finish. They fell silent again. I brought you here not for revenge. Not to brag. But to give you clarity. I reached down and pulled a copy of the magazine from a leather portfolio. Placed it in the center of the table like a chess piece. They all stared at it. Jake whistled under his breath. Nicole leaned closer. My mom blinked, her eyes a little glassy. I built this with no help, no encouragement. Just stubborn faith, I said. So don't congratulate me now. You didn't earn that part of the story. A beat passed. Then my voice softened, but only slightly. You don't get to skip the grind and show up for the glory. Nobody moved. Even the waiter, who had just stepped out to refill drinks, seemed to hesitate before backing quietly out of the room. The magazine cover lay there like a mirror, catching reflections that weren't flattering. Jake cleared his throat. All right, we get it, man. You made your point. I smiled slightly. Did I? He sat back, suddenly more defensive. So what, you just wanted to embarrass us? Throw your success in our faces? No, I said calmly. Embarrassment only works when people care. You didn't care when you laughed. I just wanted you to see yourselves without the punchlines. Nicole fidgeted with her bracelet. Okay, but it's not like we meant to. You did, I interrupted. You meant to. You thought it was harmless, because you didn't believe it would lead anywhere. You mocked something you didn't understand. I turned to my mom. Do you remember what you said that night? She looked up at me, eyes red but dry. I didn't mean it the way it came out. I nodded slowly. Maybe not. But you never took the time to ask me what it actually was. You just labeled it, and left it at that. Like my work was a fantasy, like I was a child playing dress-up. She opened her mouth to speak, but stopped. I waited. And in that moment, something shifted. They weren't arguing anymore. Weren't making jokes. They were just listening, for maybe the first time in years. I worked 16-hour days, skipped birthdays, sacrificed sleep, social life, and stability. I continued. While you thought I was avoiding life, I was building mine. I gestured to the view behind me, glass walls looking out onto the city skyline. This isn't about money. This is about acknowledgement. Respect. Something I never got when it actually mattered. Nicole looked down. Jake exhaled. I'm not mad anymore, I said finally. But I'm also not the same person you laughed at. That version of me? He's gone. My mom reached out, hesitating. So what now? I leaned back in my chair. That's the question, isn't it? Nobody spoke for a long time after that. The kind of silence that doesn't just fill the room, it presses on the skin, settles in your chest. Like everyone's waiting for someone else to fix it. The waiter returned with dessert, something elegant involving dark chocolate and a sugar curl, but nobody touched theirs. Jake was the first to break the silence. Look, I was out of line. I know that. I didn't take what you were doing seriously, because I didn't think anyone could make it work. Not without connections or luck. I didn't think someone like us could do something like that. I looked at him. So you mocked me? He winced. I didn't know any better. Nicole was next. She hadn't made eye contact with me once since I told the story. I guess I always thought it was a phase. You didn't ask for help, and I didn't ask questions. That's on me. I stayed quiet. Then my mom reached out, her voice soft, uncertain. I was scared. I didn't understand what you were doing, and I didn't want you to get hurt. And when you told us about the $5,000 month, I didn't laugh because I thought it was funny. I laughed because I didn't know how to process it. She looked up at me. That's not an excuse. But it's the truth. I studied her face. The corners of her mouth were tight, her hands trembling slightly. Not from age. From awareness. Like she'd finally caught up to a moment she was years late to. The truth is, I didn't hate them. Not really. What I hated was how small I had felt under their roof. How invisible. How hard I worked to prove I was something more than their assumptions, only to have those assumptions handed back to me at dinner like a napkin-wrapped insult. But here, now, they weren't defending themselves anymore. They were quiet. Ashamed. And maybe for the first time in my adult life, listening. I picked up my dessert fork, finally, and took a slow bite. Then I set it down again. I don't need an apology, I said, voice steady. I needed this. My mom blinked. This dinner? No, I said. This moment. Where you see me clearly, maybe for the first time. I stood up. Not dramatically, not for effect. Just with the quiet certainty of someone who knew they didn't need the room to validate them anymore. I've got one last thing to say. I began, resting my hands lightly on the back of my chair. They all looked up, waiting. There's this moment, I said, in every journey where people decide whether they're watching your story or in it. For years, I thought you'd be part of mine. I imagined you cheering me on, helping out, maybe even celebrating the little milestones. I paused, letting that land. But instead, you sat in the audience. Crossed your arms. Laughed during the quiet scenes. Jake looked away. Nicole blinked hard. My mom clutched her napkin in her lap. I don't blame you. I continued. But I do see you differently now. I turned to my mom. You told me it was just a hobby. Like you were protecting me from disappointment. But I wasn't disappointed. I was driven. What I needed then wasn't for you to believe in the business, it was for you to believe in me. She nodded slowly. She looked older than I remembered her. Or maybe I just felt younger last time. I turned to Nicole. You were always quick to make jokes. But never once did you ask how hard it was to wake up at 5 a.m. to build landing pages before work, or to keep pitching a product after 20 rejections. Then Jake. And you. I know you think life is just luck and timing. But it's not. It's hours. It's nights skipped. It's pushing through when everyone tells you to get real. He nodded. Quiet. Sincere for once. I circled back to the head of the table and looked at them all. So, here's what I'm going to do. They sat up straighter. I'm not cutting you off. I'm not walking away. But I'm not coming back to the same role I left, either. The version of me you knew, he kept quiet so he wouldn't make you uncomfortable. He minimized his dreams to keep your approval. I took a deep breath. That guy's not at this table anymore. Then, calmly, I sat back down. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't storm out. I didn't need to. Because now, they were the ones unsure of their place at my table. We sat in a silence that wasn't awkward this time. It was thoughtful. A silence with weight. The kind that follows truth, not tension. I could see it on their faces, the slow unraveling of old patterns. The realization that the roles we used to play no longer fit. I wasn't the quiet middle kid anymore. Not the one working part-time jobs while everyone asked when I was going to figure things out. I was the one who did. The waiter returned one last time to clear the plates. Jake stood and helped gather glasses without being asked. Nicole folded her napkin neatly, no longer glancing at her phone. My mom just sat there, watching me, not with guilt or sadness, but something closer to awe. Maybe even pride. But it didn't change what I needed them to understand. Before we left, I placed a small envelope in front of each of them. Nothing dramatic, no hidden checks or grand gestures. Inside was a copy of the front page of my business's monthly report. Revenue. Metrics. Growth. A single quote printed at the bottom. Some people won't believe in you until you no longer need them to. Jake opened his first, let out a low breath, and said, You really built this. Nicole looked over and whispered, You did what none of us thought was possible. And my mom, she didn't open hers right away. She held the envelope in her hands like it was something fragile. I don't expect you to understand everything I've done, I said, grabbing my coat. But I do expect you to respect it from now on. My voice wasn't cold. It wasn't bitter. It was grounded. We're still family, I added, looking each of them in the eye. But family doesn't mean entitlement. It means showing up. It means seeing each other for who we are, not who we used to be. I started walking toward the door. Are we going to see you again soon? My mom asked. I paused with my hand on the doorknob. Maybe, I said, glancing back. But next time, you'll have to invite me. And I stepped outside into the night, into the hum of city lights, and into the version of myself I had spent years becoming.